Good morning, Scott here, known as Cantaloupe to some online, and I'm bringing a video to you on a subject that's interesting to me. It might be of interest to you or someone you know, and I want to react to a news broadcast I just watched. I'll link the video in the description below, and it's an interesting case of real estate dispute where a party is under arrest, apparently, with felony charges at this time because he was found with a firearm, which may or may not have been legal. Apparently, it wasn't legal. He's being charged. But he also took over part of a property, a beachfront property, where there was, the details aren't super important, but just for quick review, a number of portions or parcels of land that are debatably owned by a group of people who inherited them. There's a lot of people involved in this case, and I want to just give an overview, summary analysis of what I see happening in this newscast, this report. So the person charged with the felony, with multiple felonies, I guess, was by appearances taking advantage of some confused and people who had been abusing their access and supposed ownership of this land, which is also used by people to access the beach, just the community, general random people. And it came to a head when this person who has now been arrested put up a fence around the area, blocking access. So somebody was kind of forced to deal with the situation, or the community would lose access to the beach. I think that's why it became newsworthy, but they don't actually say that I saw in the report. But anyhow, it brings up a lot of interesting questions, and it's a little bit complicated, but not too complicated to answer. I think that the people who believe that they own this land have acquired it by way of annexation, which happens a lot, way more than people want to talk about, way more than most people realize. That people that supposedly own real estate, especially in California, have not always owned it. It hasn't just been handed down for thousands of years. It has been handed down since their ancestors murdered people to take it. Let's be honest. Okay, I keep bringing this up in my videos that this land has been settled already, but due to technological differences between the people who were here versus the people who showed up later, the land was annexed, which means stolen, acquired, appropriated. It was manifest destiny. Maybe you've heard that one. But anyway, these people ended up with the land. There's a handful of names of people who aren't using the land. It's rightfully being used by the community, which leads me to my point. There's something called fair use, and I don't see nearly enough mention of fair use in litigation, the stuff that I've seen, the reports that I've seen, and the cases that I've looked at. Fair use means that, yes, somebody might actually own a service or a thing or a property, but if it's being, first of all, if it has public access and it represents a service to the community, especially a vital service, and I think that recreation, some types of recreation fall under that category as a vital, essential business or service, then you have to consider that. You have to weigh in the current and potential trade-offs of blocking or removing that access, such as with a grocery store. If it's the only store in town, this is a great example, even though it might be privately owned and exist on private property, to suddenly put up a fence around the only grocery store would represent a huge burden for a community, potentially. This is an example, but so it's the same idea, though, where these people who are not using the land, who are just hoping to make a quick buck off of it. In fact, this person in the news report from across the country, who was going against the wishes of the other family members and felt like he had been kind of robbed all along by them and ostracized by them, he said, yeah, I'm going to try to do business with this guy who ended up getting arrested. And he signed over his portion of the land with a condition that if it were ever to be sold, he would get a portion of the proceeds, because he wasn't getting anything regardless. And so it's a messy situation, but the way I see it, it's pretty simple. There are a number of people with dubious claims to it. They acquired it by, in the best of cases, illegitimate means. They stole it. So at some point it was stolen, And it should just be used for public access, and literally has been for the last 50 years being used for public access to the beach itself. And if you ask me, it should just be public land. I don't see how really any of these people, based on what I saw from the news report, have a legitimate claim to block access or squat on this land. Unless it's a matter of survival for them personally. If they're going to develop it and put a house on it, I think that the function, the actual proposed use of a thing, has a huge influence on what is proper with it, as far as who owns it, what direction it goes in the event of a dispute. What is the proposal? What is actually going to happen next? What is if their plan is to just put up a fence and tell the community they have to figure out something else, I'm going to be on the side of just turning it over to the public at that point. If it's already been annexed, there's no reason why it couldn't be annexed again by the city or the county and become a public beach. I don't know. It's a tough call, but that's how it looks from here based on what I saw. If you want to review that video, it's interesting. Reach out with questions or comments to whitehotrobot@gmail.com. Thank you.